Welcome back to another episode of Love Living Local 315. We are your hosts, Scott and Kelly Greats. And today we're honored to have Mary and Megan from the Catholic Charities Domestic Violence Program of Herkimer County joining us. They've been providing critical support to individuals experiencing domestic violence through their 24-hour hotline, advocacy, and counseling services. Both Mary and Megan are dedicated to helping others navigate through legal, medical, and housing systems. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out to their confidential hotline. 24 hours a day, it's available. Phone number is 315-866-0458. And just know that you are not alone. All right, so our mission is to shine a spotlight on awesome people doing awesome things. Today's topic is not awesome, but the fact that we're bringing awareness and education to domestic violence is awesome. And the work you guys do is super noble. So we're joined today by Mary and Megan. And logistically, you work for Catholic Charities or the county?
Catholic Charities.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what you do for Catholic Charities.
So we are a program of Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities has many programs that we offer here in Herkimer County, but specifically for the domestic violence program, we offer a 24-hour hotline that can be for any type of phone call. It can be a general question or completely anonymous phone call. It doesn't have to be for a crisis call. And that's for, you'll reach a local Herkimer County advocate 24/7. We also offer a safe temporary shelter here in Herkimer County, safe dwelling actually, but that is here in Herkimer County in a confidential location. We do supportive counseling and we help through the family court and criminal court processes. So that could look like assisting with filing a petition, accompaniment through family court proceedings, and advocating with lawyers, everything from that aspect so that someone doesn't have to go through that alone. We do a lot of safety planning. Almost every discussion includes safety planning. I'm trying to think. It's a very broad spectrum. Yeah, that we
Talk
do.
about your roles, your individual roles. What do you guys do?
So I am newly into the community education role. So that could look like going into schools, providing presentations, tabling at wellness fairs, presenting to maybe an employment group. If a business is interested in having their employees trained on DV 101, we can kind of do something like that. Almost anything community based is if there's an event, then you guys want us present, we can be there and try to shine some light and awareness that we exist and we're here to help survivors through that. So that's kind of my new role.
Okay. How about you, Megan?
I am the assistant director, so I'm also the senior advocate. So I've kind of I'm wearing different hats all the time. And we all kind of do that in our roles. But I've been with the program about 22 years. And so I'm really passionate about what we do and everything that we provide here right in our community.
Yeah. 22 years, you must wear a lot of hats through the years.
Yeah, a lot of hats. So we're doing everything from answering the hotline to running to family court, going to local police departments, ERs, things like that as well. And then when it comes to the safe house, we're in there with our residents and we're doing things to give them a hand with regular daily activities and also provide individual counseling for them too.
I did visit your website and the amount of services, it's so funny, I have the list right here, that you offer. A lot of people just think it's a hotline and it's not. And even what abuse is, that toggle, that tag there was so useful to read, that there are so many different types of abuse that some people probably don't even realize it's going on.
Absolutely.
For sure. Where I'm going with this is like, one thing that stood out to me is you also help out people that may not be experiencing the violence themselves, but family members or anybody that needs just someone to talk to, especially children. Like that's what comes to mind with me is like the amount of calls that you probably get from the bystander or the people in the home that also need the support. You know, that's just awesome. It's just amazing. So I want to talk a little bit, Mary, you kind of shared with us that you were a victim of domestic violence.
Yes, I am a survivor. 9 years out of an abusive relationship and on my healing journey, because that's what it is. It's a journey.
Yeah.
So this is definitely something that I'm very passionate about. I think that's what led me here to the position that I'm in today, to be able to help people out of situations that are similar to what I experienced.
And I'm sure that makes people feel comfortable too, as well. Being able to talk to somebody that's been through it, that you can say, I know where you're coming from. I understand. I can relate. So
yeah, sometimes I don't share too much because it's they're experiencing their own experience right now. So I don't normally disclose that I've experienced something similar.
Okay.
So if anyone's listening, they might not have known before this. Just
we
because
can cut that out if you want us to.
That's okay.
Okay.
I don't mind talking about it, but I don't want to try to make it about me, because the moment's about them and really about everyone's experience is so different. So even if I experience something similar, it's still very, very different from what they're experiencing in that moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about the misconceptions, right, around what abuse is. And, sometimes there's just accepted behavior and we don't think anything different. It's just the way life is, right? This is how it is. So you want to address some different levels of abuse and some things that people may be going through or struggling with that they may not realize this even qualifies as that.
Absolutely. There's definitely several myths that still exist that have been passed down generationally, I would say. The first thing that comes to mind would be that substance abuse and alcoholism causes domestic violence or abuse, and it's just not the case. It may add to it, but it does not cause it. So that sometimes can be very difficult if your partner is experiencing alcoholism or substance abuse complications. It makes it really difficult to try to identify that how they're acting is not because of that. That's a choice still.
And a lot of times it's easier for victims to believe that there's something else causing this to happen, right, because their partner has always said that they love them and they care about them and they're going to protect them or help them through things. And when they start to abuse them in different varieties of ways, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, all of those things leading up to physical abuse, they don't always recognize that. And when they do realize something's wrong, they like to put a name to it. So if they can say, well, he, in the past, he or she has had trauma or things like that, that may be true. But there's a lot of people in our world who have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and they've never abused their partner, significant other.
Mm-hmm.
Such a strong point, and something I never even considered, right? And it's a magnifying glass, I guess, the substance abuse, right? It just magnifies who you already are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
yeah, a lot of the tendencies, if we have them actually look at it, the relationship, they'll realize that a lot of the tendencies were already there. And like you said, it just kind of magnifies.
Let's talk about the kids. I know this is like super difficult. All of this is difficult, but I grew up in retrospect, probably in a mentally abusive,
emotionally,
yeah, more so with my parents. So I guess what I'm asking is if you've got partners, parents, whoever, that are just mental warfare and emotional abuse with each other, right? So as a child, I remember internalizing this as they're fighting about me again. It's me, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going back to probably second, third grade. They ended up getting divorced and whatever. But I guess the question is, when should a child get involved, right? Involve you guys. What does that look like? And how do you handle the fear of consequences? So when you're doing education with kids, what does that conversation sound like? Or is it a conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I want to thank you for sharing that experience and bringing that light to that, because that's a topic I think that sometimes isn't thought about when you think about domestic violence and what the kids are experiencing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that was like a multi-question.
Yeah. Welcome to my show. I'm going to ask you one question, but throw 4 in there.
Yeah. So the conversation kind of looks like pointing out healthy and versus unhealthy behavior. Really, the age depends on the child that they recognize that something is happening that's not necessarily healthy. For a long time, I think that as children, we believe that everyone is experiencing what we're experiencing. Mm-hmm. We don't realize that other people's households look different.
Right.
So you start hanging out with friends and teammates and things like that, and you start to see how their parents are behave towards each other and things like that. And that's where you start to see, maybe how my parents communicate isn't necessarily the best. So that's kind of how we approach that. But it does definitely try to be age appropriate, make it relatable. What was the other part of the question? What age should they really reach out?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, when do you start educating kids?
All the way through, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It kind of starts more as friendships when we talk about healthy versus unhealthy at the younger ages. So maybe K through third grade, probably I would talk about more of a friendship base.
And even
recognizing
like their own anger and things like that and what they're doing with that. So healthy ways to express that without hurting somebody else. And so sometimes in the younger groups, we talked about like taming your dragons, and we would have like a stuffed animal dragon. And then this whole conversation about when you're angry or having feelings like that. So really we go from kindergarten right up through. And a lot of times the kids will come to us after a presentation, or during the presentation, they'll realize as we're giving examples that something unhealthy is happening in their home. And when we talk about what to do when the abuse is happening in your home, they really recognize that as, oh, maybe this is something I should be doing. Mm-hmm. And they'll approach us after the class.
So Kelly is a retired elementary school teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I'll ask you, where is the line, right? And I know you went through this in many situations where what can you say, what can't you say when you know that, I mean, this kid is going through some stuff, right?
Well, as teachers, we are mandatory reporters. Like, we don't have that option as teachers, that if you even think that there is some sort of violence happening to the child primarily, then we are state mandated reporters. We have to call that in. But even if it's happening, like, children, they really do want to talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. You know, when they're young like that, as we get older, I feel like we try to keep things internalized, mm-hmm. but kids are they really want to share. And so my question is, do you go into the schools? Are you providing education in the schools? Do you have partnerships with all the local school districts?
So there's some that we go in every year annually during, mm-hmm. so February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So that's primarily when we're in the schools. Last year for teen dating violence, we did get into each school in Herkimer County. We had a table outside of the lunch. We had really good conversations.
It's so important.
We pointed out each student, we had such great participation in conversations with the students. They pointed out green flags to look for in a relationship. So we're not mm-hmm. always focused on the negative of domestic violence, to try to help point out health, because that's important. A lot of times we are like, oh, that's a red flag, but we have to point out the green flags too to look for in relationships.
Yep.
So that was a really good Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month last year, and we're trying to do that again this year. And then there's a few schools that we have annually participated in to do kind of like a DV 101 class, mostly through health classes, I would say, mm-hmm. for like the middle school age.
Yeah, like I know our daughter's in 8th grade, and right now she's taking health. And mm-hmm. I think that's the perfect time, because like, she's not dating yet. She's not in a relationship. And it's so important for our youth to know what a healthy relationship is, mm-hmm. because we, like you said, we don't know what their household is like.
Right. And especially circling back to what Scott shared, if that's all they've seen, mm-hmm. that's all they know, that's normal. That's their norm. Right. That's what they're going to find in a relationship, because it's normal. So we are hoping to get some more participation in the schools and more and be more involved in that.
Another thing that I want to talk about is the book club that you did, in Colleen Hoover's book, It Ends With Us. And I am so happy that they made that book into a movie.
Yeah.
With great, actors and actresses. And I took my daughter to see it. And I think it's so important that we have movies like that, so that people realize this is happening, and
yes,
and you need to stand up for yourself as a woman or as a man or whoever. So if you want to talk a little bit about that book club, I would think that you might want to do that again this year.
I was very impressed and empowered by that book club. I wasn't sure what to expect when I did it on a whim. I was like, the movie is being released. I presented it to our director, and she was green flag all the way. Go for it. Mm-hmm. If you think this is good, go for it. So we had across Herkimer County, I partnered with all the local libraries. We had 98 people participate and receive a free copy of the book.
That's awesome.
even more people already had the book and participated. We've had 2 in-person book club discussions that were amazing. And we have another one scheduled in Old Forge for November. And then the movie came out. And we did a premiere night at the movie theater in Valley Cinemas. They worked with us to get a discounted rate. I think there was only 10 seats available for the movie premiere. That's how many people in this community this book has touched. So now those 98 people have passed that book on with our program information in it.
That's awesome.
To others to share Lily's story. It is important to point out that Lily's story is unique. Like I said earlier, everyone's experience is different. It's also fictional. That book is fictional, but Colleen Hoover did do a lot of research, and she kind of sprinkled in some real life experiences that her mother experienced.
Well, my daughter asked me, Mom, because she knew I read the book. I said, I would love to take it. What's it about? I said, I'm not going to tell you what it's about. So she had no clue going into the movie what it was about. And she left and she said, can I borrow the book? I want to read the book. And I was like, that's awesome. And she was just shocked.
And I think that's a really good point. So circling back to the 98 people, the conversations I had while people were signing up at wellness fairs and stuff like that, that's kind of where I spread the awareness of the book club. There were age groups from 12 to 85 that were interested in the book, already read the book, loved the book. It doesn't matter your age. The book is very well written to reach all age groups. The movie, I think they did a really good job portraying the actual book. And there were a few things left out, but that's just because I read it right before, again, for the second time, right before the movie. But I will say they did a really good job of reaching
the masses, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're also offering a sponsored showing of the movie. It'll be out of the movie theaters by this time, but October 19th at 1 p.m. at Valley Cinemas. So that'll be a first come, first serve basis. I believe the theater sits about 155 maybe, but that'll be a good opportunity. If you haven't seen the movie or you want to see it again, you can come see it, sponsored by us. So it'll be free admission for the first 155 people who attend.
Awesome. I want to go back to the proactive nature of this, right? So obviously the dream for you guys, as funny as it sounds, is to be out of business, right? Not have this job. And one of the knocks on American Cancer Society, cancer research, is it seems like so much of it is to help people who have cancer, but how do we prevent it, right? And so with your situation, how do we get out in front and educate kids on just what it means to be a good human, right? And be mindful of your words, your actions, and things that you're doing within friendships, relationships, family. So what are the educational measures, or are there educational measures?
Are you thinking primarily through school, or are you thinking like parenting?
Are there programs? Are there, just for kids to hear, just that message about being respectful and kind?
I think that we pretty much cover a lot of that in our healthy and unhealthy relationships. So there's a good portion that's covered as far as you're talking about being respectful and things like that, being kind to others, but also being aware of their actions and how it'll affect others as well. So we cover a lot of that when we're in the schools, I would say, and during that, basically the whole month of February when we're doing Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So we're doing that in all sorts of ways to catch their attention. So like Mary mentioned, the green flags. We've done things before where students had painted a fingernail and then it starts a conversation with others. Like, why do you have that? Like only one is painted purple or orange because that's the color for teen dating violence. But just starting conversations and using opportunities to teach others. So if we see something happening or come across a situation, we'll use it as a teaching moment to be able to say, hey, let's look at that in a different way. Let's switch some things around. And if, say someone is telling a joke or something like that, people often do when they're in an uncomfortable situation, which happens a lot when we introduce ourselves and tell them what we do. People often meet that with a joke about it because it's an uncomfortable topic that unfortunately a lot of people still think is something that should be kept behind closed doors, which we all know it isn't anymore. It's something that we all need to talk about. It's a crime just like any others. So I think sometimes by switching things around and teaching in that moment, whether we're likable or not, we tend to do those things. And a lot of times people are happy to hear the other side of it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, I didn't think of it like that way. I didn't put my daughter or son into that scenario when I was talking about it in a negative light. So I would say all of those ways. And just when we're at the many community events that we are ourselves are holding, but also our community where we're there, and tabling gives opportunity for discussion. And that's the biggest part of learning, I think, is having someone to talk to that understands it.
Let's talk about some of those community events. You've got the Domestic Violence Awareness Golf Scramble, which you do every year, correct? Then you've got Take Back the Night. Do you want to share a little bit about those events?
Yeah, absolutely. So the golf scramble, this will be our second year doing the golf scramble. I think it's going to be here to stay. Hopefully it's been successful, and it does raise a lot of awareness to maybe a community that we don't typically raise awareness through. And then Take Back the Night will be towards the end of October. I don't know if we have a solid date officially. I know we have like a tentative date, but I know it'll be during the DVAM week, which is usually that second to last week in October. And that will be at Herkimer College. That is a safe space for survivors and allies of survivors to get together for a candlelit vigil. It's very, very empowering. I can't describe it in words. I don't know if you can, Megan, but I had it described to me before my first time attending, and there's no words to describe how empowering that can be.
And then you have a new event, your Peace in the Park.
Peace in the Park is an annual event. We've done that for a few years now, and I know we did it years before. That will be at Herkimer Arc Park this year, October 12th, 11 to 2. There will be free hot dogs, hamburgers, popcorn, cotton candy. We're going to have Sheriff's ID there. It's going to be a good free community event for families. We'll have
some good raffle baskets.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really great raffle baskets that are being donated by the community, which is amazing to have their support. And then we also have
the basketball tournament.
A basketball tournament happening on the basketball court there, sponsored by Burton Basketball. So it'll be three games going on there. So that event's always a great time. Hopefully we have good weather. Mm-hmm. We also have in October, we're doing our first in a long time, I believe 10 years, conference that we're offering at Herkimer College. We have some really great speakers coming. That's free for anyone who'd like to attend. Lunch will be included. That'll be October 2nd. And we have another event in October, I believe.
We have information. Signups are all on our Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is the Facebook page?
Our very long name of Domestic Violence Program of Herkimer County is our Facebook name. And then for Instagram, it's just DVP Herkimer, I believe, for the handle.
And we'll make sure we get everything linked in show notes and on our site as well. So people, how do people help? How do they get involved? If it's through volunteering, if it's through finances, or both?
So our hotline number is the best number to call to get involved. And there's multiple ways you can volunteer. Whatever your comfort level is, we can, if you're more into helping at events, we can find a way for you to help there. If you'd like to answer the hotline, we do have volunteers that answer the hotline during non-business hours. And we provide the training for that and all those things. But same for sponsorships or donations. That's the best number, the 315-866-0458. And that anytime. I know people work during the day, so you can call later and set something up if you feel the desire to help in some way. We can find a way that somebody's comfortable.
You want to share a couple different volunteer? I mean, you mentioned obviously at events, but how else can people get involved?
Even just on a personal level, I feel like they can start to have the conversations at home with their children and with their family members. I think that's so important. And then just share the information, because the more that we share it, the more people will talk about it, and the more people are talking about it. It's just the better it is for everybody in our community.
And another thing, I know that last year, the gym that I went to was taking up collections for like the safe houses and stuff like that, donations and things of that sort. Is that something that you guys are also looking for? Or it might have been Oneida County. I'm not positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime anybody is willing to donate, we are happy to accept that. And we do have limited space. So depending on, the items that they're looking to donate. But all of everything that we make, if there's any funds that we make, stays here local in Herkimer County. So that's the other great thing about it is we're helping our own community every time. So if someone donates, it's going to someone that most likely and unfortunately that they know.
Yeah.
And to mention somebody else too, I do want to give a plug to Main Street Mercantile and Allie Tamburo, who has an exhibit going on at her shop there. It's October 12th from 6 to 9 p.m. and it's featuring the art of survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. So this exhibit is a celebration of survivors and people being able to express what they've gone through and raise awareness, which you just said is so important. Just for people to know that it's, that it's okay.
Yeah.
That
absolutely.
was the other event I knew there was something else that I wanted to touch on. So I'm glad you brought that up. So that will be the same day as Peace in the Park. So that's October 12th in Little Falls. Yes.
From 6 to 9.
Yes. Yeah. And she's got a very nice agenda set up and things. It's going to be really empowering too. It'll be similar to
so
Take Back
too.
the Night. I think it'll be really awesome.
Yep.
Well, it's cool. And it's cool to support the people, right? I mean, sometimes people are hesitant to support organizations or entities they feel like should be funded with taxpayers, and there's a whole rabbit hole there. But the artwork thing is cool to be able to own a piece of their art and really support them.
Or for people to express what they're going through in different ways. Like some people feel very comfortable with talking, and other people
they don't.
That's not their comfort level. Instead, they choose to write or draw or paint or whatever. Yep. So I think it's awesome.
All right. So another potential myth, but I'll ask the question. So is domestic violence primarily male dominated? Is that a fair question? I mean, is it typically men?
It's
a fair question.
It's a fair question for sure. There's a few different answers to that, I would say though.
Okay.
So one of them being that it depends on what type of abuse and violence you're looking at. So if we're talking about severe physical abuse, then yes, absolutely, that's true. Most victims are female when you look at the percentage and males as the abuser, but it's definitely not all. So we really want to stress that because we have male victims that we work with. We have male victims that we're friends with, I would say, that we know that it happens to. And depending on the age group, so when you're talking more in high school, college, the numbers get closer. So we've got the 1 in 3 for women and 1 in 7 for men. So that's where you're going to see the numbers get closer. Did you want to add?
Just that both of those numbers aren't entirely accurate. Right. It's not something, it's still not common to talk about. So we don't know the amount of male victims or survivors that haven't come forward. So it is hard, but what we experience is primarily women survivors.
Yeah. Twofold question, really, just to let people know that it's not just, right? I mean, I think as a male, you're like, well, I would never be a victim of domestic violence, right? That sounds counterintuitive to my lens, and every myth or misconception I might have had. But
when you go on their website and you can see what is abuse, economic, emotional, intimidation, coercion, threats, isolation, like some people just have that image in their head that it has to be physical,
right.
And that is not the case at all.
No.
Yeah.
And with isolation, I know when I first started, a lot of times people would envision isolation to be like where someone was locked in a house or unable to get away, that type of thing. But isolation can be something like just keeping you from family and friends, but they do it in a way that's really confusing, and it makes it seem like they're not telling you can't go there, but what happens after you do go there makes you not want to go to your friends and family as often or call them as often because there's always a fight or an incident that occurs. So they start to isolate in ways, even using the fact that they're jealous that they're spending more time. And people confuse jealousy with love a lot of the time. So they're saying, but I love you. Don't you want to spend more time with me? And of course, at the time in the beginning of relationships, you absolutely do. So you may start distancing yourself from your friends or your family. And then you find yourself just wrapped up into the relationship and further from people who actually can support you. And that's the whole goal of the abuser, is to have that power and control over them.
The other organization, I don't know if you work with them, but we should mention, is Kristen's Fund. So also Joe Palumbo, I know, does a fantastic job with sports teams. And, really, again, going back to the male piece of this, but goes to football camps and football programs and, shares with these young men what it's like to be a man, and so, I guess it'd be super cool if schools would take the initiative to make that part of sports, right? In high schools, where have a coach, or have an outside person come in, even if it's just for 30 minutes, right?
And I've got to say, the push, it's definitely there more so than when we were in school, Scott.
Yeah.
Like the character education has taken a huge leap forward.
Listen, bullying was celebrated in the 80s. We've come a long way, but there's still, plenty of
long
work
way
to
to
do.
go.
Yeah. For sure. But it's definitely something that the schools are talking about, and it's definitely more of an initiative than it was when we were in school, which is it needs to be. So why don't we talk about some challenges you face in your work as a victim advocate and what keeps you motivated? It has got to be so tough for you some days to just do your job and stay positive.
Yeah, it can be heavy. It can be heavy.
Yeah.
But I think seeing a survivor take their power back is the motive. That's the motivation. That's where it is.
It's just so humbling to be able to help somebody and get them through that whole situation to where they feel safe, their children feel safe. And to be able to do that and help somebody and really change lives is just remarkable. Like I know you mentioned we want to be, we wish we could be put out of business. And unfortunately, it's still here. It's still happening. And so with that, I think just remembering, we do a lot of self-care work. We rely on each other a lot. And just lifting each other up the best that we can, along with the survivors and the victims that we work with. But their stories are remarkable, and to be able to help them is just what keeps us going, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the focus has to be on the individual, right? Like you create this avatar or a specific person that you're fighting for, right? Either trying to help or trying to identify and then help. I think when we look at initiatives like this in the big picture, it becomes overwhelming. Like we're not going to stop this. It's not, it's not a perfect world, unfortunately. But, when you just fight for that one person that you have in mind, what would be your advice to that person? I'm sure you've given this advice a lot, but, someone who's struggling with their voice or
coming forward or just,
That's hard. So because everyone's experience is so unique and where they're at in their journey might depend on the advice I'd give them. But the first thing that comes to mind is just a reminder that healing is a journey. You're going to take it one day at a time, and I'll just meet you where you're at right in this very moment. And just know that you have people who care about you and resources able to assist you through the process.
Yeah, pretty much we're here to help, and we'll meet them, like Mary said, wherever they're at. So they could be not yet ready to leave. They could be in the process of leaving, or they might be where they're staying for the time being. And so we work with anybody no matter where they are at in that. And everything is free and confidential. So that's important to mention. A lot of times we've had people talk to us and not give us their name, and that's okay too. They're just getting some information and some support, and then they'll call back later, and then they'll reach out more, and then able to help in that way. So they can remain confidential as long as they need to.
It's such a wild cycle, right? If I'm battling an addiction, then I come forward and say I have this addiction, and hopefully I have some support channels internally. But when the fear, the concern, the problem is in your house, right? Like you want to come forward, but then go where and get support from who?
Right.
And so what's the peace of mind you can share or hope, for that person who says, yeah, I'd love to get out of the situation, but I can't. Where am I going to go? Like, who, if he or she finds out, like this gets worse, and that fear, so I guess what's the hopeful message?
So fear is a huge factor. It's probably like the number one factor that keep people in abusive relationships. I think just letting them know that we're going to help them with any barrier that comes up, and be there for them and providing information referral. And if it's something we can't do, we're going to connect them to the appropriate people who could, that they're going to get free from it, and they will.
And that could look a lot of different ways. That could look like going through family court, getting an order of protection same day based off of emergency filing, and maybe having a partner removed from the home through family court that same day. Or it could be like relocating to a confidential location. When we say safe house, I used to think of cots. I'm going to admit I was very naive.
In a gymnasium.
That's kind of where my brain went. Yeah.
But ours it's beautiful. I would stay there with my son. You get your own private room with your own TV, and you do share a kitchen and a living room setting, but you can primarily stay in your room. You can come and go as you please. It really is an apartment style living with a few regulations just for safety purposes, but it's completely confidential and, like Megan said, free. So it's not ideal to have to relocate, but if safety deems it necessary, it is an option.
None of this is ideal.
Right.
So, I mean, let's start there. And I'm sure that, like you talk about the shared kitchen, that the community is probably powerful, right? To know that you're not alone. And so many people think that it's a me issue, right? And it's not.
Right.
You know, there's a whole community of people.
Until you start talking about it and realize, I'm not alone in this situation,
For sure,
unfortunately.
support groups, huge. If there's one message you hope listeners to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
This is a community effort. Bystanders have to be active. We have to talk about it. We have to share that our program exists. We have to help build each other up to help break generational cycles.
And sometimes you just need to be that person. Sometimes a person that's going through this needs to hear from somebody they love or that cares about them, you need to do something about this. Like you can be in a better place for sure, you know, and to not have that conversation is probably easy for some people, but in the long run, you
takes
owe
courage, strength.
You owe it to the person that you love, that you want to help, you know, for sure.
Ed Milet talks about everyone has the ability to change their family tree, you know, and that's the power of one. Like what your tree used to be doesn't have to be, you know, when you talk about breaking family patterns and cycles. And so, you know, hopefully you find encouragement to think that you are empowered and you have the ability to be that one person who stops the cycle and changes the direction of the family tree. So
absolutely. And we try to share verbiage to use with somebody that you may know experiencing it or is a survivor, so that you know how to respond best. Because sometimes it can just be very subtle, like, hey, you didn't really deserve how he just spoke to you. Here's a number if you want to give him a call. You know, be the non-judgmental person that can just kind of like subtly say it, be a safe person they can come to in the future. It doesn't have to be the whole difficult conversation all at once. It can just be planting those seeds throughout the course of a time, because it's a journey. It's a journey recognizing that you're in a situation, finding out how to get out of it, and then actually getting out of it, and then healing after getting out of it.
And it's important to note, like, we can't push people to do things. That's never helpful in any situation. And we want to really respect their decisions, because even though we do a lot of safety planning, they have done so much safety planning before they ever call our number on their own. They've gone through so many things. But the biggest message, you know, to go along with that is that we're here to help, I would say. And, you know, if someone is doing the abusing, I would say that the message to them is, you know, it's a choice. And you can choose to do better.
Great advice. Well, Megan, Mary, the heavy but important, impactful topic. Your work is noble, right? And super appreciative. You know, we appreciate it. The community appreciates it. What I even know. And, you know, there's so many unknown heroes in our area. And, you know, we don't label as heroes all the time, because we have this, you know, we talk about myths and misconceptions, right? Athletes and pop stars and whatnot, but you really are the real heroes. So thank you for your work and all you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll make a hard turn here. We always end these with our rapid fire 5 questions at the end, and hopefully end on a positive note and loosen things up a little bit. But we'll throw these at you, and you can kind of tag team them.
Yeah, both of you answer each one. I'll start out. What's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
I've recently gotten into reading. Okay. I wasn't much of a reader before this year, but it's like an escape. I just into the book. And I think maybe the book club jump started that and even more. Yeah.
I would say soccer with the kids and reading too, because I've recently gotten right back into it too.
How old are the kids?
I have 2 7-year-olds and a 9-year-old.
Right.
Ooh, you're in the thick of it.
Yeah.
I just posted on Facebook. Don't blink, because yesterday we had a 7-year-old, and last night we were watching his first home game as a senior.
Yeah,
So
it is. It's crazy.
second one to be a senior. What's one word to describe, just one word, the work you do?
Empowering.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Favorite spot in Central New York?
Oh, Adirondacks.
I was going to say Old Forge.
Yeah.
I really love Old Forge.
So do we.
Climbing mountains.
Yeah, camping.
Figuratively and in reality. All right, so here you go. Books. You guys are readers, so this is a good one. What book are you currently reading?
I'm in the Throne of Glass, Sarah J. Maas series, so I don't know what book I'm on. I don't know the name of it. I'm lost in that 9-book series.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I just got into a lot of the thriller books recently. So I'm actually reading Home is Where the Bodies Are, which sounds terrible with what we're talking about. But it was an author that was suggested. So it is not about anything like this, but it is a good book.
This is how we know Megan's giving honest answers.
Yes, I totally am.
Full disclosure. Home is where the bodies are.
Before I said it at all.
I kind of like the psychological thrillers too, I've got to say.
They're fast reads.
Best advice you've been given?
I got one. Remember, you can't fill from an empty cup. So it's that reminder to take a little time for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one. I can't think of it.
I think Megan just gave you the best advice you ever heard.
I think,
there you go.
there you go. That's mine too now.
Well, thank you both. Super appreciative of your time.
Thank you
here.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Love Living Local. As you know, we do not run ads. Our only mission is to shine a spotlight on amazing people doing amazing things here in our local community. If you'd like to support us with this mission, we have 3 ways you can help. You can share our content on social, subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, and you can visit our lovelivinglocal315.com website to stay up to date with everything happening in Central New York.